Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Double Play. Today, we're going to be doing an Orioles season preview, and here we're joined by Jack, or you might know him as Daily Dose of Baseball on TikTok, and then we're also Jack. So I'm outnumbered here. We've got two Jacks. We did this one with Priya, who is a Giants fan, and I was outnumbered by Giants fans, so now outnumbered by Jack. So Jack, thank you for joining us today, and we're happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it.
I complimented Jack on his name before the show, and I think Jack's the best name. So very happy to have you on. And let's get right into what the Orioles did this offseason. Honestly, not as busy of an offseason for the Orioles as I think we all expected. Some notable additions or keeps on their team were Adam Frazier, James McCann, Kyle Gibson, Cole Irvin, and Michael Givens. And there were only a couple subtractions or players that simply haven't signed yet, including Jordan Lyles, Rougned Odor, Jesus Aguilar, Brett Phillips, and Robinson Chirinos. Chirinos doesn't have a team yet, but overall, not a huge influx of players and not a ton of players leaving. Jack, to start it off, who was your biggest addition or subtraction for the Orioles this offseason?
Well, I guess we were in a very nice spot considering that we didn't have any major, core players, leaving free agency, which for any team that has, a budding core growing, it's always a great thing to have, a luxury of players that are, under contract and team control for a while. So I guess by default, our biggest loss was Jordan Lyles. He led the team in innings last year, as I'm pretty sure. He had a very solid season. He was right around league average. So he gave us a lot of innings. He saved the bullpen, which was incredible last year. I didn't expect it to be so good. But yeah, so I think we definitely replaced him well with Cole Irvin and Kyle Gibson, two very established players at the big league level. And, Kyle Gibson is only 1 year removed from an all-star appearance with the Rangers, I'm pretty sure. I don't know how he did that. But Cole Irvin's really solid. He, it is a lot of self-contact, doesn't really put the ball fly to the ballpark and really won't Camden yards. So I think we plugged our holes somewhat nicely, but I definitely wanted us to sign, a bigger free agent considering our AGM said we'd be big players in free agency, and we weren't. So I was a little bit disappointed, but nothing too breaking happened. So I'm more than fine with this offseason.
Yeah, I'm going to 100% cheat saying my addition subtraction, but just because I didn't love or hate anyone that left or joined, like you said, it was kind of felt a little bit lateral to me with a little bit improving on that, but I'll talk about that a little later when we talk about the grade. But I'm going with adding Gunnar Henderson and Grayson Rodriguez to the team. You get both of them a little bit at the end of the year, and I know they're not coming from different teams, but you're adding them to a team that overperformed and just missed out on the playoffs. And then plus you had John Means to the rotation around, it was July, I looked up when it comes out, and he was a clear-cut ace when he was pitching. So if you can piece it together and kind of be around the playoff hunt come July, and you add John Means and Gunnar Henderson is breaking out like I think he will, I like the team's chances to make the playoffs. And just because there wasn't anyone that left, like you said, or anyone that really came in that was too crazy, I ended up going cheating and going with the players that in-house that they're going to be gaining coming back or breaking out into their rookie years. So Gunnar Henderson and Grayson Rodriguez were the two big ones for me.
Yeah, I mean, I like those picks. I mean,
they're both really good picks.
They're both amazing. I'm going to side with Jack and say I think Kyle Gibson and Cole Irvin, probably they fill the most important spots on the roster out of anyone that was added this offseason. They add stability, I think, at least. I mean, I don't love the lack of upside with the two. I mean, Kyle Gibson's always been one of those pitchers where he's going to be solid, but he's never going to be anything really more than a 3 or a 4 starter. And if you need him to be, then I don't think he's in his right role. But I mean, I think it was good for an Orioles team that does have a lot of young talent. But as we get into the grade in the future, I would agree that I thought the Orioles could and would do more. And so it feels a little lackluster this offseason. But Jack, do you want to start us off with your grade?
Sure. So I thought a lot about this, and I know Draft Mark on YouTube, he had a lot of very, I guess, negative things to say about our offseason. I kind of understand it. Fuzzy sort of had a lot to say about it as well, also on YouTube. I'm trying to plug them, but I referenced them when talking about the Orioles offseason because I don't really agree. I mean, they said that, they were very disappointed with how we did. I'm not exactly pleased, but I'm not disappointed. I'm like, okay, we replaced our, players that left in free agency with similar players of that caliber, And I will say I'm very pleased that Rougned Odor is gone. Like, I genuinely did not like him starting at second base every day. So I'm glad that we got, rid of him. I hope he does well in the Padres. I wish him nothing but the best. But I'm going to give us a C-. I mean, we didn't make any game-changing moves. I mean, if Adam Frazier returns to form with the Pirates, before he got traded to Seattle and then he cooled off, then, I mean, I would take that any day, every day, 162 games out of the season. But if he plays well and if he could bring in value, I wouldn't mind trading him. I really wouldn't mind trading him at the deadline. But I'd give us a C-. I mean, we pretty much plugged, every loss that we had with players of this similar caliber. So I'm not super pleased, but I'm not disappointed. This is the first real offseason where I've been truly really invested in Orioles baseball since last year, technically I really was, but before last year I was really invested in 2016. So I was really, just coasting through the rebuild, but this is a real offseason where I actually had expectations and they weren't met. I'm not disappointed.
I'm right there with you with a C-. I think if you look at the offseason kind of tunnel vision, I think it's a C+. You mentioned, I think Adam Frazier is a step up from Rougned Odor. James McCann's probably a better backup catcher than Robinson Chirinos. Kyle Gibson, Cole Irvin to replace Lyles. So I think you probably improve slightly in terms of what the roster is. And then you're getting the rookies, like I mentioned as well. So I think they get a little bit better, but my actual grade is a C- when you factor in the expectations. With the GM comments that you kind of touched on, he was saying they were going to significantly escalate the payroll. Kind of gave hope to Orioles fans like yourself that, signed the big free agent, and it didn't do enough to turn them into a lock playoff team like I thought they could have, just because they were so close. And I think right now the third wildcard spot's really wide open in the American League, and the Orioles with a few bigger moves I think could have kind of locked that down into people predicting that's where they were going to be. But I think they kind of stayed where they are, maybe got a little bit better, like I said. So they're still definitely in that playoff race, but I think they could have done more to turn them into a lock for that spot, if that makes sense.
I fully agree. I think if we signed Rodon, that would have definitely given us that huge step forward in that rotation. And also, team morale, I think, is also a huge part of it as well. I mean, I think that's it's a massive intangible, and I'm kind of an analytical person, so I don't really look at intangibles that much, but I have to in this case when talking about my Orioles. I mean, if we made a big move in free agency, like signed Rodon or even a Correa, that would have said so much for, not only the front office that, we're really trying to make a massive push, but also it would have said a lot for the players in that clubhouse. And also, we don't really have much veteran leadership because Mancini's gone. So who steps forward? Mateo? It was his first full season in the majors. So I don't know. It would have said a lot, and we didn't do that. But I'm not complaining. I'm really not. I'm just excited for Orioles baseball.
I think I said mid-year last year that a free agent fit I really liked for the Orioles was Dansby Swanson. And I'm not a huge Dansby fan in general. I thought, last season, I think people overreacted a little bit just because he had improved a lot. But I thought he fit exactly what the Orioles were building. And they were the kind of team that I thought, even though it's not the biggest step up, it feels bigger than it is. The Cubs are a similar way where, I don't think Dansby's going to make them tons better. But for the Cubs who needed another boost after the trade deadline a couple years ago, Dansby made sense. And I hate to make it a full sweep, but I also have a C-. Because, as I was saying, I had the thought process in my head that the Orioles, right on the cusp of the playoffs, they have a lot of money. They've got positions to fill. Like you mentioned, Jorge Mateo. I think they can do better than him at shortstop. Like Dansby Swanson would have fit. I think Xander Bogaerts or Carlos Correa, one of the shortstops would have really fit in Baltimore. I think you could have added starting pitching, especially since you mentioned Jordan Lyles, who was probably the one last year, left for another team. There was room to improve. They have money to improve, and they have ample reason to finally, and they just didn't. So I wrote it down that they had an opportunity to really capitalize on their 2022 season, and they just didn't do a very good job of it. I like some of the guys that they added, as you mentioned, Ryan, in a vacuum, but with the expectations that I had coming in, it just left me wanting them to be doing a little bit more. So I'm going with a C- as well.
Yeah, and I over the course of the off season, I heard, and I was listening to a lot of radio. I don't think I've ever been able to say in a very long time. I only listen to Spotify when I'm driving, but I was listening to a lot of Orioles radio during the offseason, and I heard a lot of people on the radio just say that we should have at least made a trade offer to Corbin Burns before the season started, and especially since, the Brewers really, really screwed him over with a lot of the things that they said about him, and a lot of the things that he ended up saying they said about him. Again, it's he said, she said, but I think that if before the season starts, we made a trade for Corbin Burns. I think that would have immediately brought our all-season grade to an A. Like, no joke. That would have been a perfect thing to do, because the wonderful thing right now about the Orioles is that we have a plethora of farm system talent. Like, we have multiple top 100 prospect infielders and not enough spots on the infield for them. So I would have loved to have, really improved in the rotation, especially with the new and improved Camden Yards. The left field wall does look a little ugly. I've been to Camden Yards a few times last year, and I didn't mind it that much. People hate on it just to hate on it. They don't need something to be angry at. But I would have really loved to have seen if we could have traded for Corbin Burns. That's what I really would have wanted. But alas, I don't think we're getting that.
I think you could see, at least from the Brewers' perspective, I am kind of on the Corbin Burns to be traded train, and we're kind of getting off topic a little bit here, but I could see that happening. No, you're good. I could see that happening mid-season, where I think the Brewers kind of maybe want to run it back, and that's why they haven't traded him yet. But I honestly, I think Jack isn't either. We're not really high on the Brewers, so I could definitely see that happening mid-season. And if the Orioles make a push for him and they're still in the playoff hunt, that could be something that pushes them over the edge. But moving on now into what to expect for this season, I'll go ahead and start this one off. I've got them going third or fourth in the wild card, and I haven't decided which one. We're kind of conducting our early preseason projections in terms of record and playoff teams, and so right now I'm deciding between third and fourth in wild card. I don't want to give away too much, and I haven't even decided yet. But I'm also going Gunnar Henderson and Grayson Rodriguez to both be in the top 3 for Rookie of the Year, and that's kind of what I'm expecting from the Orioles this year. I'm on the Gunnar Henderson, Grayson Rodriguez train, and I think they're going to put up probably close to an identical record from last season, if I had to guess.
Yeah, that's a pretty fair assessment. My words are not wordy today. It's a very fair assessment, honestly. I mean, again, we didn't make any game-changing moves. We just kind of replaced what we needed to replace with similar players. So, I mean, it's fair to assume that we'll have a rather similar record. I think our bullpen definitely had a massive season. I don't really expect them to take a down season, honestly. I mean, with Dylan Tate starting the season on the IL, that'll be a little bit of a hit to the bullpen. Felix Bautista hasn't pitched in spring training yet, I'm pretty sure. So that bullpen is going to really need to step up within the first month of the season. But yeah, I would expect a rather similar record. I'd give us 84, 85 wins. I think we just missed out on the wild card spot, though, because, the Tampa Bay Rays, with how weird that team is constructed, they always somehow make it to the postseason. I don't know how they do it. It's got to be devil magic, but I see us just missing out on the wild card spot, fortunately.
Yeah, I'm gonna follow that as well, and I think I'm gonna be slightly harsher because I would look at the roster and I think, okay, this roster is pretty much the same, and that would make me normally think, okay, they can have a pretty similar season. But I think people, when they talk about the Orioles, because it was so fun, fail to speak about how much of an overperformance I think it was, where, the bullpen, I do believe, overperformed, and the starting rotation most definitely overperformed at times. I really like the lineup, and if they had added bigger pieces, say, in the lineup or in the rotation, or really solidified that bullpen just to assure we're going to have another great year, then I wanted to bring them up in that conversation for the wild card again. But for a roster that we all believe is right around the same, like maybe improved a tiny bit, but right around the same level it was last year. I think that I find it hard to believe that they're not going to fall back down to where their rebuild was going to be. Like, I'm a Giants fan, so I remember this is a much not harsher, but a bigger example where in 2021, they win 107 games, which is way ahead of the pace of their rebuild. And we saw last year what I think the team is closer to being. They're not a team that's going to win 107 games. They're a team that's going to be around the 80 to 90 wins, somewhere in that range. And I don't think the Orioles are yet at a point in their rebuild where they're a wild card team. And so I think they fall a slight bit back. I kind of think that they either have the same record they do last year and miss the playoffs, or I wouldn't be surprised if their record takes a step back. They fall to maybe an under 500 level, because that's where I thought their rebuild was being paced at anyway. I love Gunnar Henderson, love Grayson Rodriguez. They're going to be the ones to lead the Orioles to the playoffs in the next couple of years. But for me, because the offseason was so disappointing from an expectation standpoint, I don't think that they got better enough to rival the regression that I was kind of expecting.
Yeah, I honestly think you're spot on with that. I think that the use of the Giants example was perfect. I mean, I did love watching the Giants, and I kind of agree exactly with you. I think with what you said before, with a bunch of players and the rotation and the bullpen overperforming, I kind of see I really am seeing that Giants comparison heavy. And yeah, I agree with you. I don't think we did enough this offseason to really put us into that playoff contending status right now. I think we're just kind of in the hunt, I guess is the right word to use. But hopefully next offseason we'll actually make some moves. If we need to make moves, I want us to. The other move I really wanted us to make, just off something real quick, we wanted us to extend Adley Rutschman. That is honestly the only thing I wanted us to do. Like, I never want this man to reach free agency in his time with the Orioles. Never let him step foot in free agency, ever. Because if you do, we cannot outbid the Yankees or another team like that. Oh, I'm just going to throw up in my mouth. I just heard myself say might go. Oh, I'm sorry, everyone who's listening. But no, I really wanted us to extend Adley Rutschman. I wanted us to pull in Atlanta Braves and extend every young player that had a semi-good season. Really? But no, I don't know. I'm kind of with you. I don't think we're in that playoff contending status. I think we'll win 85 games at the most. And if I was to give like an extremely hot take, they win 89, 90 and make the wild card spot. But I don't fully believe in that take. But that's a hot take. So I don't know.
Well, that's a perfect segue into our bold prediction part of the episode. And I'll go ahead and give mine. I have Adley and Cedric Mullins hitting 20-plus bombs each. Cedric, I believe, had a 30-30 season in 2021, I believe it was. Right now, Adley's predicted to get 17, and Cedric Mullins is predicted to get 18. So I'm going for 20-plus bombs each, and I think, like you said, I think they need to extend Adley. He's going to be, even if he's not the star that we all think he's going to be, there's something to be said about even just paying someone to be a face of a franchise for their whole career. And I think Adley definitely has that potential to be a future face of a franchise. The Orioles would be a great place for him. And yeah, you're right. They need to extend him like yesterday.
Yeah. No, I like that take, honestly. I really do.
I'm going to move to a different outfielder. You picked Cedric Mullins. I'm going to say Anthony Santander makes the AL All-Star team. When I was doing our positional rankings, I was a big fan of Santander's season. He's criminally underrated. I wouldn't be surprised if he hits well over 30 home runs again. And Ryan and I are prepping for our fantasy baseball draft, and I was shocked at how high he was in ESPN's rankings. I'm like, no, put him lower. I don't want everyone else to know about it.
I was going to say the same thing. I was filling out my fantasy, who I'm gonna get going for. As Santander is near the top there, I'm going for him.
Oh well, now I'm mad that that I'm going for him as well. But he's had a great couple seasons the last couple years. I think he's going to continue to rake, and he's part of, like I mentioned, that lineup. I love the lineup. But you have Adley, a catcher. I'm not sure exactly who they're planning on playing at first. I would assume it's going to be Mountcastle. Then you've got Frazier and Mateo up the middle. I feel like that's maybe where they're the weakest. And then Henderson at third. I like Mullins and Santander in the outfield, and you fill in that one last outfield spot. That's an up it. And I mean, they're all young too, and I think some of them are underrated. Like I think Mountcastle will have a good year too. But it was really just the rotation and the bullpen that held me back from saying, I don't think everything's at that level that the lineup is.
Yeah, I agree with you. I fully agree with you there. I think Mountcastle will probably be taking most of the reps at first base. I mean, he had an excellent defensive season. He was solid offensively. I think that if we lower the left field wall a little bit, but kept it at that distance, he probably would have hit 25, 30 home runs. Because he got so unlucky last year. It's unbelievable. But yeah, no, I fully agree with your Orioles takes. I mean, I really hope they're going to be as good as I think they are, as good as we all thought they were last year. And I hope they're a little bit better. But if they're a little bit worse, I wouldn't be too surprised. But I don't know. Hopefully, they don't come crashing back down to earth and go on to 500. I really don't want to see it again.
But this season isn't even. This season isn't the biggest deal for the Orioles fans, because I mean, all Orioles fans need to know that the next couple of years is where it's at, because Henderson, as we mentioned, has crazy potential. Grayson Rodriguez, maybe the best pitching prospect in baseball, and then all the players that we're mentioning in the lineup are all young. I mean, and they, like you mentioned, the Orioles have money to extend them. So if they're willing to spend it, and if they develop as everyone's expecting, this season will be the least of the Orioles' concerns, because they're going to be contending for winning some real big baseball games in October the next couple of years.
Yeah, fully agree. This season isn't that big of a deal if we don't do that well, but I think 2024 is probably the season that I think most people will be expecting us to take a massive step forward. That's just what I think. I don't know. Maybe 2025. I don't want to think about a season where I'm 25 years old watching the Orioles.
Well, that's all we have for today, the Orioles episode. We thank you, Jack, for joining us. Make sure you check out all of his socials at Daily Dose of Baseball, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, whatever you use. We'll plug them all down in the description. Make sure you follow us as well. Stay tuned. We've been doing this series for every team, and that's all we have today. Make sure you check out all of your favorite teams' videos and stick around, subscribe, comment down below. What do you think is coming for the Orioles in 2023? Are they making the playoffs? Are they not? Let us know. But thank you, Jack, for joining us, and we've been Double Play. We'll see you guys next time.